Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use, but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year. And plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to the Minefield podcast from Anfield Index Pro. As always, I am your host, Alan O'Donoghue, and I am joined by the Batman to my Robin. We let you be Batman this week. Dr. Andrew Vincent. Andrew, how are you today?
You know, struggling to keep up with all of the LFC news that has just been coming from every angle. It's all over the place. You know, just stories and stories and stories. Hard to know what to talk about today.
And they're over in your neck of the woods at the moment as we're recording.
That's true, kind of. There's still sort of far away. They're in Pennsylvania, which is, you know, like New York borders Pennsylvania. It's probably close enough that I should have found a way to go. And it never really occurred to me until yesterday when I was reading, and it was like, oh, they're in Pennsylvania. Like, I had no idea like where they were going in the U.S. Maybe that makes me a terrible fan, but you know, there's just been so much going on. It's tough to keep up with everything.
Listeners, I'd just like to say thank you so much for listening to us over the years. This will be Andrew's final podcast with us because he's only a part-time fan. Get the fuck out. But let's just see how everyone feels at the end of this podcast, Andrew. Let's just see how they feel about you.
We should, because we'll let everyone know ahead of time. Al has predicted fume because we were talking a little bit about what we're going to talk about. I don't understand why, and like not even being facetious or joking. Like I don't see why anyone would have an issue with what I have to say today. But we'll see. And if you do, by all means, let Al know. That would be.
Yes, he's very easy for, you know, the Cape Crusader to hide behind the mask and let me take the hits. So don't worry, but I'll pass them on to him. So, Andrew, today we are going to have a conversation about the continuation about new coach and players reacting to new coach in terms of decisions, in terms of the effort they put in terms of their future and all that kind of stuff. And I suppose to kind of kick it off, let's have a chat about, I suppose, your experience of working with players when a new head coach comes in. And for those, say, players who see this as an opportunity, maybe younger players or, people who've got, longer contracts already signed and they're here for the foreseeable future. What's your experience for them coming in? Are they all on trying to impress, or are they still trying to feel out what it's like and maybe not going 100% straight in? What's your take?
I think the first thing is that there's a lot of optimism typically about what's possible. And so, when you have a certain structure for a long time, or the same people making decisions about you for a long time, either going somewhere new where there's a new opportunity for you, or, having some change in the structure above you, just it does give that bit of a blank slate and that opportunity to kind of dream a little bit. And so I think sometimes, when you're used to being judged in a certain way or by certain people, or they're asking certain things of you, expecting certain things of you, or even they just see you at a certain spot, right? I think last time Kostas Tsimikas was our example of this, is he's always seen as this, kind of second option left back, or but never really gets a run in the first team. I think someone like him, is going to have an opportunity here to say, hey, maybe I can snag this spot from Robertson, right? Like someone new is coming in. They're going to give us the benefit of the doubt, the opportunity. This is my chance to show, maybe I've always thought that I could jump into that spot, that I was good enough to be starting week in and week out. Maybe you're someone like Trent, or someone who's maybe kind of imagined yourself in a different position or different role. And one of your thoughts might be, hey, this is a time where I can show that and show that I can do something a little bit different. And so, if there's things that you've seen about yourself that you feel like haven't been recognized by the previous hierarchy, the previous people making decisions, there's probably some optimism of cool, this is my chance to show that and, put myself in that position where maybe I never would have gotten that opportunity before. So that can often be really an exciting part. Then of course also comes with probably some worry and fear and anxiety that lives in the back of your mind for different people and different players, just about, what if I don't impress? What if, if things had been really good for you before, what if that changes a little bit? Just new systems, new structure, new drills, new expectations. Sometimes there can be some just anxiety that comes with change. What is this going to be like? I don't know. That can often be equal parts refreshing and anxiety provoking. But yeah, I think those are some of the big things, is that, it gives, we talk about narrative a lot. And sometimes when there's a structure that exists with coaches, it's you sort of have to live in that story of who they see you as and what they expect from you. So you lift that, and it gives you a chance to maybe look inward a little bit and sort of be well, what's my story of this? And do I have a chance to show that, that's really what I can do, and kind of get them on my page rather than just me being on someone else's.
Yeah. And I think anxiety is very much demonized, certainly now. People are writing books all the time about anxiety and all that kind of stuff. But anxiety is actually ultimately a self-preservation experience. And over the years, I've spoken with a number of athletes, but also heard really, really high-level athletes talking about anxiety they experience, especially people in combat sports, and the anxiety they experience before a fight, which makes perfect sense. And how they're able to fuel that, take that and use it as fuel to help them focus, because that's essentially what anxiety does. It shuts down your brain to, fluffy clouds and, somebody saying something to you yesterday, and gets you hyper-focused on the thing that's in front of you that is a threat to you. So if we've got the internal understanding and ability to reframe that and go, okay, well, I'm going to use this to be hyper-focused on doing all I can to impress and seeing how that plays out, that's using it in a positive way, as opposed to having it shut you down completely and paralyzing you, which I suspect for the players at the level that they're at, they're probably not going to hit that shutdown, because they've been through so many situations that they've had to overcome to even get into a first team Premier League squad.
Yeah, I would say that's typically, the optimism and anxiety both can be fuel. right? And equal parts fuel, and they kind of like play off each other and play with each other to sort of push that forward. And I think, if it's me working with the team or an individual, like you said, the anxiety itself or that feeling of nervousness, that's not going to be something I immediately say, hey, that's an issue. You have to feel relaxed all the time or at ease. The question becomes, do you notice how it's affecting you? And what I would sort of worry about or think about is like, let's say you come in with sort of this optimism, anxiety, that's there these first couple of days. It's first day of school jitters. It's starting a new job. It's that kind of thing, right? What is this going to be? And how are people going to react to me? A little more comfortable because your teammates, but there's this new, how are the coaches going to react to me? What's this going to be like, right? It's kind of exciting and not overwhelming. The thing that could happen though is, let's say, I don't know, you're the first one who Slot picks on to give some criticism to or say, hey, that's got to be better, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, like, does he not like me? And then maybe you're doing a couple drills and it's like you're working on some things where it's like, oh, these aren't my strong suits, or I misplace a couple passes. And, how that anxiety and that emotional state then twists into narrative and affects narrative. And so if what I'm worried about is, what if the coach doesn't like me and I, don't do well, and then I don't impress him, and then I end up not playing at all this year. And then all of a sudden you start not doing well, making sure that you don't let those start shaping your narrative of like, okay, here we go. This is what I was worried about. That's a couple times he's called me out. That's a couple things I've done wrong. That's, a couple times I haven't shown my best. This other person who's in the same position as me is doing really well and getting these compliments. Oh my God, am I not going to be playing this year? And this is stuff athletes do all the time, is this kind of internal, where am I falling in the pecking order? And that's something about, now that the pecking order is sort of dismantled to some extent, especially given the players who aren't there right now, there is going to be some of that looking around and being like, okay, like, am I putting myself in the spot where I want? And so that would be where you have to be mindful of that anxiety not creating then an anxious loop where it becomes more intense and defeating, because then the story is I'm failing. And if I keep making mistakes, I'm going to fail, and I have to avoid mistakes so I'm not failing. And that can stop being motivating and inspiring in the same way. That can start to, just shift focus to places where it's not going to help you perform. That doesn't happen across the board, but that's where people sort of get to the road towards shutdown mode. And that's what I would want to be aware of.
Yeah, and I think probably someone like Kostas Tsimikas is probably exactly in that position right now, because Andy Robertson isn't back yet. I think he's still got another week or so before he joins up with the squad. So he has had 2-3 weeks of an opportunity to really show Slot, this is what I can bring to the table, and even have those conversations. This is where I see myself. And let the agents take care of the conversations with the club in the background and all that kind of stuff. But really kind of show this is something I can do. He's going to be playing in, whatever amount of matches, so he's got an opportunity as well. But then you're also not playing with the best players because they're all away still. But it's an opportunity.
Which again, that's an opportunity. But then, it's something you could see too, where it's like you get this opportunity, things feel really good, you feel like you're gaining a lot of ground, and then the other players go back, and that can become kind of a head game, because then, you're trying to judge who's playing with who in preseason games and who's being paired with who in scrimmages and small-sided games. And, that's the kind of thing I end up working pretty hard often with athletes, especially in situations where like, the hierarchy they're used to is moving away a little bit. It creates a lot of openness, but that also creates a lot of questions. And like, we need some sense of order and structure as people. Like, that helps us feel comfortable. And so, helping them not try to read too much into how coaches are reacting to them, and like recognize that part's totally out of your control and on them. And, there might be moments where you have meetings or can request meetings, or, where you can help explain your side and help them understand you differently, or look for your strengths. And, take advantage of those. But also, if you're trying to play at a high level while also thinking every moment about how is what I'm doing now being reacted to by a coaching staff or being evaluated by a coaching staff, that's a lot going on in your head. You don't want that as the primary lens through which you're viewing yourself. And that can be tough, because it matters to you. And so having the presence of a coach there, I've seen this with, players in younger levels or a university level here, where it's like they know there's scouts there watching them, and it's hard for them to then play the game, without wondering, oh, how did that play? Oh, I made a mistake. And it's not just like, shoot, I made a mistake. It's like, oh, this person saw that mistake. And so that would happen probably too with this new coaching staff. There might be, for some of these players, right, depending on where they fall and how comfortable they are with that position, just that experience too of having those two parts at once of not only did I make a mistake, but now I'm beating myself up because I'm assuming the coach saw that mistake and didn't like that mistake, and now I have to make up for it. That's the road to bad places. And so often there's work to be done just around what do you do with that sort of coach version of the coach that's living in your head.
And what would you do? So what would you suggest someone does to manage that?
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. Ha. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Yeah, I mean, the first question I always have is, how is it affecting you? And how prevalent is it?
In training, in life, outside of the club,
in training.
Okay.
In training, pretty much. I mean, like if you get to a point where, that's always important is like, if you're struggling at practice, how much of that are you taking home? And, what are you doing with it at home? And like, is it, you can't sleep, you spend all your time watching tape of other people or checking online to see what Twitter has to say or to see, how are people reacting to certain games. Like if it becomes that obsessive, then, that's complicated too. And that's like, okay, like that's important to talk about, is having balance in your life where you have some strong support from people, but also some strong parts of your own identity that aren't necessarily about sport, or just things that you can do where it's like you can put soccer away for a bit, put football away for a little bit even. On the pitch is more what I'm thinking about, or in training, or in a kind of game situation, or like a preseason game or whatever, is like, okay, how is that affecting you? And is it that every touch you're taking, every second of the game, like you sort of have this feeling of being watched and like have this feeling of being evaluated, and that's getting in your head? Is it that, in certain moments where things slow down, you're kind of thinking, oh, I wonder what so-and-so thought of this play. Is it that after the game you're wondering about it? And so sometimes, like, if that voice is there, but not really a problem, then just being able to say, hey, that's okay. That's really normal, right? To normalize that and be like, it's just a thought. Like, I would put that typically into the category of like the 4-year-olds. Is like, you have this 4-year-old following you around being like, coach is watching, coach is watching, coach is watching. And it's okay to just be like, yes, thank you. Like, I appreciate your letting me know. I am aware of it. And like, I'm going to play my game now and do my thing now. Then that's totally okay. If it's at the point where you're becoming very critical of yourself, or you're thinking more about what coach is thinking about you, then you're able to engage with the game. That then it's like, okay, how do we address this? Probably bring up the 4-year-old metaphor kind of there too, is start being like, hey, thoughts are just thoughts. Probably also, like, I'll use this phrase, voices and volume knobs. We all sort of have multiple things going on in our head at different times, and kind of different, we'll say, quote unquote, voices or like perspectives that kind of bounce around. And, those are being able to kind of turn down the volume and like just say, when that pops up, see if you can turn the volume down on that and turn the volume up on, being positive with yourself, or just what do I need to do? And, what are the focal points for me? And identity is a big one that I work with people on, because you can live there as a way of quieting down some of the other stuff. You turn up, what do I need to do? What's my identity? How can I affect the game? And that usually is positive for performance. At some point too, like if you were really, I haven't done this in a long time. I used to do a lot more of it, but you can do kind of like a Gestalt empty chair, or there's an exercise called interviewing the internalized other, where you might take this version of the coach that lives in their head. You would ask the player to play the role of the coach, and specifically not like the version of the coach that lives in their head. So you're not necessarily trying to be like, well, what do I think the coach would say? But like the version of the coach that lives in your head, just answer from that perspective, because it's your internalized version. You have actually access to it in a way that, you don't have access to what the actual coach is thinking. And so we might do that as an interview where they play the role of the coach and I interview them, or in an empty chair, it's like they might go back and forth between being themselves in one chair and being the coach in the other chair, and kind of having a conversation with themselves, which sounds strange, but those are often like really powerful and cool kinds of interventions to do there. But I probably wouldn't do that unless, some of the other stuff wasn't working very well. But what it would help us get to the bottom of is, what is it that this person has projected onto the coach? Or why is this coach sort of looming so large in their head? Like, what's going on there? And, often that interviewing the internalized other, the empty chair, just draws a lot of that out, and then allows us to work with it in a different way than maybe just reacting to sort of this internal voice or this feeling of being watched and evaluated.
It sounds so simplistic, but that is one of my favorite techniques to use, and especially with young people. Because, so I can see where you're coming from, because you wouldn't probably use that often, because somebody in a team is, or an individual is coming to you because they want to utilize your skills. I get a lot of young people come in because mum and dad said they need to come and speak to somebody. So they can be quite standoffish and go, I'm not going to talk to you at all. So as a practitioner, I can be quite playful. And relationship building is the most important element for me, always. But I can very quickly move them in that space where it's okay. So you can ask them a question. So what do you think your mum or your dad or your coach thinks about you? I don't know. And all of a sudden, you pick them up and get them sitting in a different chair and saying, right, you are now your coach. And I'll talk to the coach. It is, like, it's so amazing to hear the things that come out that they couldn't access when they were themselves. But when they move into that physical space and they become, and I always make sure, I don't know if you do the same, I always make sure when they move back to themselves, they thank the other person for what information they've given to them. Mm. And they do. Like they stare at an empty chair and say, thanks very much. You know, but it's so powerful because then when you can look at the maybe the negative things, the story that's coming in their heads, but you can also ask questions around the positive. So what do you think, Arnie, that Costas is doing really well? And all of a sudden it's going, okay, there's the hook. We can start to use that as information. That's really powerful as well. And then you build on top of that. And I haven't, honestly, in all my years, I've never come across someone to come out of that technique and go, that was a complete waste of my time. Never. Now, I've had people come out and go, that was fucking mental. Or you are crazy, but it worked.
Yeah. And that's usually the reaction is like, you are mental, both in that was kind of weird and uncomfortable to get into, but also I can't believe what came up through that.
Absolutely. And it's so powerful.
Yeah. And I think, you know, honestly, for me, it's not necessarily who's coming to me and what the dynamic is. I think it's more about, you know, just over time, what you get used to doing more of and less of, and what you're reading at a different moment, and what, you know, is influencing your work at a different moment. And so there was a time where I was reading a lot more Gestalt and doing a lot more of that empty chair work just because it was front and center on my mind. And I think the pandemic played a role in that too, because the more online therapy I've done, it's hard to facilitate an empty chair or an interviewing the internalized other when it's an online format, and impossible when it's a phone format, which sometimes I'm working with athletes by phone where there's not even video. And so that changes. But yeah, like I think it's popped up more on my radar recently with some different approaches I've been reading more about, internal family systems and emotion-focused therapy, which both use, the empty chair and parts work more intensely. So yeah, that's awesome that you do so much of it. And especially with younger people, where it's like, you could imagine 15-year-olds can be intimidating. And so being like, okay, like, we're going to have you talk to this empty chair. Like, what do you think the coach would say? Right? Like, sometimes there's a barrier to entry there of just like, you have to have a good relationship, or like they have to be willing to be a little uncomfortable because it's not something we typically do. But yeah, super powerful, very well worth using.
And we'll progress the conversation on. I do like this, Andrew. I like talking to you about the practical techniques that you use, so we can kind of dip into this throughout the new season as well. But taking this conversation a little bit further on, so we've talked about the players who may be looking to impress, who maybe have been traditionally on the periphery. What about the players who are front and centre? And I'm thinking about three in particular: Virgil van Dijk, Mo Salah, and Trent Alexander-Arnold. Three players who will essentially need to sign new contracts this summer, or we're losing them for free, or we sell them this summer. And the window is getting shorter and shorter to find a replacement for them if we do sell them. With those players, what's your experience of we'll say the top dogs, the leadership group, with that transition period? Are they the ones who are kind of going, well, I'm in a position of power here, I'm in a position of strength, I am one of the top dogs here, I'm going to be interviewing this coach to see if they're good enough to work with me, and then I'll make decisions or not, whether to be part of this group or not? Or are they kind of seen it as an opportunity to go, well, I can go and impress this new guy and, maybe get an extra couple of years on my contract?
I mean, first things first, right? And I said this to you before the pod. I don't know why in the world any of them would sign a contract before September, right? Like, why? What's your motivation to do that, right? Is like, you're one of the best in the world, and that if you let your contract run out, you're going to have great offers from awesome teams that would present exciting new challenges for you. Even if you don't want to go somewhere else, that the interest in you is there. Their agents have already gotten calls. I'm positive about that, right? Like, they know the 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 teams that would be interested in having them. the second piece of that is like, you just don't know what things are going to look like yet. You know, you don't know, how am I going to get on with this new manager? Am I going to like his approach and style? Am I going to fit in well with his approach and style? You know, do I think, you know, the new sporting director and kind of structure that we've brought, even though it's the return of an old structure, are we going to bring in the players that it would take to be successful over the next 2, 3, 4 years? You know, like they don't know that yet, and they don't have assurances. And even though there's conversations that would take place, of course, why would you just go on those conversations? You know, like you want to get back and see how things are. If you're Trent, you want to know how you're going to be used. If you're going to be used at right back and that's not really what you want, then is the role going to suit you? Are you going to like how it goes? Like, why would you sign a new deal before you've had that conversation? You know, if you're Virgil van Dijk, and, you know, I think he is really committed to the club. I think he does really want to stay. I think that's true with Trent too. It's probably true with Mo as well. But like with any of them, like even if you want to stay, why not make sure? You've got some time. It's not like someone's going to kick you out the door if you haven't signed your contract by September. And so I think, yes, you absolutely want to give that trial period and kind of see, is this what I'm looking for? Is this a good fit for me? So rare as an athlete that you actually have the opportunity to do that, or that you're in a position to do that. I guess you would maybe run the risk of, if like you play like absolute garbage for 2 months, that there'll be like, never mind. Or if you had a significant injury where it's like, you know, you're Virgil van Dijk and you have an injury that's going to take you a year to recover from, you know, could we just let your contract run down? Sure. Like that's maybe a risk that you take, but it's a, you know, a low risk, I would say, in comparison to players are absolutely evaluating management and coaching. And especially when you're one of the elite players in a group, you're making calculated decisions about your career, what's best for you, and how you're going to fit in with the management and coaching structure. And so, yeah, that's just part of the business. Like I don't begrudge them that at all. And if one of them ultimately decided like, this is not a good fit and I'm going to walk away from this, as a Liverpool fan, would I be like, that fucking asshole? Sure. But if I was working with that person and they were navigating this, I'd be like, hell yeah, good for you. Like, take care of yourself. That's a part of what this is about.
So if you were sitting opposite any of those three, or all of those three individually, are you saying to them, look, maybe you shouldn't rush into a decision here. Maybe you should give yourself some space. Maybe you should not sign a new contract before the end of the summer.
I'm not the agent, right?
No.
And so like, I don't insert myself into those kinds of questions or thoughts unless I am very clearly invited. Every once in a while, you know, someone will say, you know, like, I'm looking at a contract or looking at a couple different teams. There's a few teams that are interested in me, you know, and, you know, then if they want to talk that out with me, I've been part of those conversations. And like, cool. But, you know, I'm not inserting my opinion into that either. Like, I'm helping them work through and consider their opinion. You know, I think if they said to me, you know, I'm just really excited to be here. I like everything. I've heard a bunch about Arne Slot. Like, you know, like, I think I want to just sign the contract that's in front of me. If they're 100% certain on that, I'm not going to be like, hey, why don't you slow down and think about it? I don't think their agent would do that, because I think right now their agents would all know, like, hey, we've got a lot of leverage, you know, so like, let's take our time and make a decision. Like, so I don't think any of them would be rushing into that. They've been around, right? None of them are 20, 21, 22. You know, they're established professionals. They've been through these kinds of things before. So like, you know, for Salah, for Virgil, for Trent too, like they've earned the position that they're in to take their time with this decision. And so, you know, I think if they were like, I don't know, like, I feel weird about it, there's a lot of pressure on me to come back, like, but I'm not quite ready to sign, then definitely validating, take your time and do what's best for you. And don't worry about, you know, how the people around you are reacting. Like, you've earned this time, and like, you're allowed to make the decision that's best for you, rather than feeling like you have to rush because, you know, you do care about the club. All of them care about the club. That's obvious, but you don't have to compromise what's best for your career in order to have an honest care for the club, right? And like, are some people going to accuse you of being selfish and whatever? And, you know, probably more from the outside than the inside. I think on the inside, every player understands that this is a business and this is part of it, and don't really begrudge players taking care of themselves or being mindful of their careers. And, you know, it's different too when you see someone every day and you know they're working hard at training and you know it's just like, hey, I just want to see how this goes. It's not necessarily going to come across as a sign of no commitment. You get to November and December, and then if they haven't signed, and it's like, okay, they're waiting to really get these offers from other clubs in January. Now I could see where like maybe some worry pops up, or there's some questions within the group about like, okay, is this person looking to leave? Is this Virgil's last season? Is this Trent's last season? You know, but otherwise, I think September, October, I don't really see for most of these players, unless they were offered a really good term, why they would, you know, really good term and really good money, and they were really leaning towards staying regardless. You know, I don't know why you would sign before you get back and see firsthand what is this like for me.
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of 1 cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
Sports Social Podcast Network.